Welcome to the road to Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. What's up, you guys? It's Jonathan Carter, and today we are kicking off a brand new series where I will be talking about and reviewing each Mission Impossible movie weekly leading up to the newest film, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, this May. Also, pause real quick. If the room behind me feels empty, that's because it is. I am in the process of moving, so my TV is down, my vinyls, all my different lighting and everything. It's pretty stripped right now, so I'm actually going to be in multiple locations while filming these Road to Mission Impossible series. So bear with me on that, and as we get into this, please be sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell, all of that. That would really help me. And while I'm reviewing these movies weekly, leave all your thoughts on each film in the comments. Be sure to tag along, follow along weekly as we discuss each movie, and then all of this will culminate in a ranking of every Mission Impossible movie. Alright, with that being said, without further ado, let's get into this review. Okay, Mission Impossible 1996 is very 90s. That's like one of the main things I can say about this film. It's almost like the best way to describe it. So, leading into this, I have only seen 3 Mission Impossible movies: Mission Impossible 3, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and Mission Impossible Fallout. While I have liked all 3 of those films in this series, I never went back to watch each one as like the new one came out. I never really kept up with the series or anything like that. All I know is that, especially as you get later into this series, these movies become very consistent, they are very good, and they do well enough at the box office. They haven't hit like $1 billion film yet, but people like Tom Cruise. People show up for Tom Cruise. They show up for action, they show up for good writing, they show up for thrills, and at least Mission Impossible 3, Ghost Protocol, and Fallout all have those in varying degrees. So, speaking of the first Mission Impossible 1996, it is very simplistic. A lot of the movies in this franchise later on go on to be these like big stunt action films, but at the core of them, they're still these spy espionage thrillers, you know, with face mask reveals and double-crossing agents and things like that. And that part, that groundwork of that espionage, of the character reveals, the double crossing and all that is set here. You can see the elements in this movie that will go on to be staples of this franchise, even in the 6th entry, you know, almost 20 years later. These movies still feel like the same universe. They're not too far detached from each other. A great thing about this movie is Tom Cruise. My future mother-in-law describes Tom Cruise as all man. And those characteristics, those traits of Tom Cruise are very much on display here. Even though he's much younger, he still plays a leading man so incredibly well. He is cocky in this movie. He is confident. He does whatever he wants to. He thinks he knows best.
I can understand you're very upset.
Kittredge, you've never seen me very upset.
And while Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise's character, has those characteristics in later movies, he obviously ages more, he matures more, and this first movie is fun to see him as just this young, cocky IMF agent. The plot of this film revolves around a secret team, Impossible Mission Task Force, IMF, that kicks off with this group of agents, which I was very surprised to see Emilio Estevez here. I did not know he was in this movie. Every time I see Emilio Estevez, I think of that line, that scene from A Night at the Roxbury.
Emilio Estevez, the mighty Duckman. I was like, Emilio!
Go watch A Night at the Roxbury if you haven't seen it. In their first mission, they are all killed off except for Ethan Hunt. So from this group being double-crossed, you start to see where the plot is going to go. With Ethan Hunt being the only surviving member, the IMF agency thinks that he is the mole, that he killed all of his team. But we know that's obviously not true. There's someone lurking, working behind the scenes, and Ethan Hunt has to figure out who that is. And it's funny because I said earlier in the video, this is not a big action movie. This is more tense, quaint thriller, and you get a much smaller framed Ethan Hunt, who is not this big, jacked Tom Cruise yet. Oh. I guess I spoke too soon. But even though this movie doesn't have big action sequences in it, it still is so incredibly compelling because it is incredibly tense. You are trying to figure out who double-crossed who, and in the middle of the movie, there is that very famous wire drop scene where it is literally silent. And even though this movie feels dated and feels very 90s, when that scene came on in this movie, I was locked in, y'all. I was on the edge of my couch watching, like, what the heck is gonna happen? That whole drop of sweat scene. And speaking of sound, the score in this movie is incredible. I think the later movies, at least the ones that I've seen in the franchise, still obviously use that same Mission Impossible theme, but the score is kind of lost in the way that it is used so well in this movie, that it dives in and out of scenes and it really creates this thick layer of tension that builds and builds and builds until the reveal in the halfway point of the movie or at the end of the film. The original 1996 Mission Impossible really set the framework for the rest of the series very, very well, even though some of the entries kind of misstep on that. So wrapping this up with the verdict, while I did enjoy the framework set in this movie and the thrills, the more spy double-crossing, kind of less focus on big action stunts, it does still feel very 90s. The acting is rough, the special effects are rough, and Tom Cruise is still kind of not only setting into what Ethan Hunt is going to be, but also who Tom Cruise is going to become as an actor. So as of right now, Mission Impossible 1996 is kind of right in the middle for me. I'm going to give the original 1996 Mission Impossible a 5 out of 10. I get if you saw this movie in the 90s and you really have that nostalgia for it and you enjoy it because it is like, it's very much its own thing. Like, you could see that it could create a franchise, but it also could just solely work on its own. But just coming from watching this movie for the first time as a 27-year-old, not really having any attachment to it, it was hard for me to get into. I can respect that there are good elements in it, but at the same time, it does feel very dated. So all that being said, as this series goes on weekly, I'll have the last review of the Mission Impossible movies put right here, and then a playlist of all of the Mission Impossible movies put over here. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the first 1996 Mission Impossible in the comments. And as always, I will see you all on the next one.